You're visiting Germany and you're looking for a place to have dinner, so you go online and find a place right next to your hotel with great reviews. It sounds perfect, so that's where you go. But it turns out to be the most awful place you have ever been to. The staff are rude, the floor is filthy, and you're pretty sure you found a mouse dropping in your food. So you do the obvious thing. You write a blistering 1-star review with photos and everything. After all, warning people about what you now realize is a tourist trap is a public service. Still, you do wonder why all of the other reviews seem so positive. Maybe the place was just recently taken over by somebody else. The answer comes a few weeks, months, maybe even years later. The review platform notifies you that your review has been taken down, and it talks about defamation and possible legal action. Does this mean you're in trouble? The good news is that no, you are not in legal trouble. What you've encountered is something that has become a bit of an epidemic in Germany recently. Businesses taking down unfavorable reviews. Now, this kind of thing is possible in other countries as well, but only in Germany does it seem to have become so weaponized by unscrupulous businesses. In this case, it's the Digital Services Act that makes all of this possible. This is a piece of EU legislation that regulates online stores and social media platforms, and in particular targets harmful content and misinformation. It was adopted in 2022 and so is a very recent law. The part of this act that is particularly relevant to us is Article 6, which states that if the content provider is notified of illegal content on its site, it can be held legally liable for it if it doesn't disable access to it. And there's also Article 16, which says that platforms must provide a mechanism allowing people to report content that they believe to be illegal. So if you receive a notification that your review was reported pursuant to Article 16 of the DSA, that's what it means. The scary stuff in the notification about defamation is just a standard text. It does not mean that anybody's lawyers have become involved yet, and it doesn't mean that the police are going to kick down your door and confiscate your phone. It means that somebody has flagged your review as potentially defamatory, but at this stage that is just their opinion. So a business owner looking to artificially boost its ratings just fills out a simple form, and that form asks the business owner to state what they believe makes the content illegal. So they simply select the option defamation. Ideally, the platform should review the disputed content and make a judgment call. Is it really defamatory? But platforms like Google, Trustpilot, and TripAdvisor receive thousands upon thousands of takedown requests every single day, and they simply don't have the time or the resources to review every review, much less predict in each case how a court of law would rule. So their corporate lawyer will tell them to play it safe and disable everything that's reported. That way they can eliminate any possibility of being held liable for something like defamation. You, the reviewer, will have to attempt to appeal the takedown, but even there, the platform is going to err on the side of caution. They have absolutely no interest whatsoever in fighting your legal battles for you. Now, this is an EU regulation, so you'd expect it to be a problem all over the EU, but for some reason, it's only in Germany that it seems to be happening on an industrial scale. And by that, I really do mean industrial. I've received spam from shady companies promising to help me identify and remove bad reviews, even though I don't have a business that you could review. And they're pretty blatant about it. 1-star reviews are bad for business. Let us help. And I'm not an expert here, but it seems to me that it should be fairly simple to run a script on your business profile that automatically flags every single 1-star review that it finds. It wouldn't even need AI. On the legal front, and here I must remind you that I am not a lawyer, the obvious question is, could the business actually sue? Well, yes, that option is always available to them, although it's probably way too much trouble when the website has already dealt with the issue. But hypothetically, they could. It wouldn't necessarily be for defamation, though. German law also has the concept of malicious gossip, and if you're sued or prosecuted for that, you're going to have problems. Defamation is when you deliberately tell lies in order to harm another's reputation. So, if the restaurant wanted to sue you for that, they'd have to prove that you knew that what you said was false. But malicious gossip is when you say things that are not provably true in order to harm another's reputation. In that case, the restaurant only has to convince the court that you can't prove that you were telling the truth. Both of these things are crimes, so in theory, you could be prosecuted and face a criminal trial. But in that case, if the court is not completely sure, you will have to be acquitted. The prosecution has to prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt. But it's more likely that you would face a civil lawsuit, and that's rather different. In a civil case, the court makes a decision based on the preponderance of evidence. That is a much lower standard, and you can be held liable if there is more evidence against you than for you. What this means is that if you are sued for malicious gossip, you will have to prove that you were telling the truth, and that can be very, very difficult. All of this is very unfortunate because while the DSA was intended to protect consumers against false advertising and other forms of misinformation, it seems to have actually given German businesses an easy way to scam people, especially tourists. If you're looking for somewhere to eat, I suggest not simply going to the place with the best rating. Instead, look for places that have a mix of good and bad reviews, and then read the most detailed reviews, especially those with medium ratings. 5-star reviews might be bought. 1-star reviews tend to be written by people who are simply having a bad day. A 2-star or 4-star review with details on what was good and what wasn't so good is much more likely to be helpful and accurate. If you think the restaurant has bad hygiene practices, there is something you can do that will be far more effective than a review. Complain to the authorities. Search for the contact details of the food safety department in the local area and submit a report giving as much relevant detail as you can with photos if you have them. They will send officers to inspect the place and they will take action if they find any violation. Aside from that, I'm afraid I can't really offer very much in the way of useful advice. Unfortunately, this is a case where something that was supposed to make our lives easier, online reviews, has instead turned into yet another way for tourists to be scammed. And yes, this is all very off-putting, but I don't want you to be discouraged. Not all businesses are like this. You just have to be careful. Be prosecuted and face a criminal charge. Criminal trial, a criminal charge, a criminal charge, trial. Why do I keep saying charge?